Jesus changed water into wine. What then did Paul mean when he says, take a little wine for your stomach's sake? He heals spiritually. The subject of wine is an interesting one, but it plays havoc with us because of our metaphysical backgrounds, more especially Christian Science. Wine in and of itself isn't any more harmful now than it was in the days of the Master. I doubt there's very little drunkenness spoken of in the Bible except in those circles where you would expect to find it in palaces, kings, and so forth. But ordinarily speaking, you don't find much of drunkenness among wine drinkers. And for the simple reason that there isn't big enough alcoholic content in wine to do any damage unless one did make a pig of themselves, swine. Now, wine was not only the drink of the sacrament, it was a church drink, but it was as normal a household drink as you could get. Water had not then been purified as it is today. Water had not been controlled, was not controlled then as today. And the most sensible drink at mealtime would be a glass of wine. Now, the same thing is true, even though we do have pure water today, and an abundance of it, and have no need of wine. Actually, a glass of wine, whether it's French wine, Portugal wine, Spanish wine, or California wine, is absolutely harmless. And to have a drink with one's dinner would be harmless. Or to have a drink on a Saturday night or Sunday with one's dinner would be utterly harmless. There's nothing of harm in it, any more than there would be in a Coca-Cola, and probably even less than there is in a good-sized ice cream soda. But wine has become identified with alcoholic drinks, dangerous drinks, harmful drinks, destructive drinks. And because American society hasn't been up to the absorbing of alcoholic drinks except in destructive amounts, alcoholic drinking is not good. And alcoholic drinking is, in metaphysical circles, forbidden, banned. And it is for that reason that, for our own sakes today, it is better that we not be identified as wine drinkers, because that identifies us as drinkers of alcohol, and that brings us into the company of those who are setting a very bad example for all humanity. There is no good in alcoholic drinking. There is no harm in a glass or two of wine. But since the public will not accept that distinction, and even the drinking of a glass of wine identifies us as drinkers of alcohol, we, in our spiritual life, leave it out. Not with condemnation, not with criticism, merely from the standpoint of not being identified with alcoholic drinking. And so we leave it alone. But as in the days of Jesus, so in the days of today, if there were such a thing as just having an occasional glass of wine and not being identified as an alcoholic drinker, there would be no harm in it. And so the harm in it really is our identification with alcohol and the fact that we lend encouragement to those who are drinkers of stronger concoctions. That to me is the story of wine. There is no harm in it. There is only the harm in alcoholic absorption, the drinking of strong alcoholic drinks. So for our sake, with no condemnation and with no criticism, we are better off not to be identified with it, not to drink it, not to be associated with it in the public's mind. One thing, however, and now this is purely from the standpoint of a true spiritual teaching, please do not put evil in alcohol. If you do, alcohol will come back at you. The moment you acknowledge a presence or power apart from God, you are no longer in a spiritual ministry. Why is this? Because sadly enough, one of the major problems that comes to a practitioner today is that of alcoholism. There isn't a day in the week that a busy practitioner doesn't receive one or more cases of alcoholism, both with males and females, men and women. It is a very sad state of society, and the practitioner who lives in fear or judgment of alcohol cannot heal it. Cannot heal it. If you put any more power in alcohol than you do in germs, if you put any more power in alcohol than you do in cancers and consumption, you are going to be the victim of them. Your only salvation spiritually is to know God as the substance of all it is, and anything that doesn't appear to conform to that to be only a concept of God, not God itself. God is infinite substance and being. Now whatever it is that appears to you that isn't spirit and of spirit has no existence except as a concept. And that concept of what? What is it that is being misseen, misconceived? God. God is the only substance. Now then, to understand that will not only free your friends, patients, students from the claim of alcoholism, but even if there were a lingering taste in you for some of it, it would remove it. And the reason is this. The moment a person says that they fear alcohol, or they hate alcohol, or they condemn alcohol, they have set up a presence and power apart from God that can very well take possession of them. On the other hand, the moment a person gets the opposite belief, that alcohol is something good and of God, then they become a victim of it. Therein must we be careful, not to call it something separate and apart from God, and not to call it something of God. You see, I have heard people say they don't fear alcohol at all, they can drink all they want, and they do, and show it, in spite of their not fearing it. Now, I don't fear it because I have seen God as the substance of all reality. But in seeing God as the substance of all reality, I've lost all my taste for false concepts. You follow that? Well, it's the same way. It is just as erroneous to look at a sick person and say you are spiritual as it is to look at them and say you are mortal. They are neither spiritual nor mortal. God is the only spirit, and God is all that is spiritual, and God is all that is spiritually real. And any appearance that doesn't conform to that is a false concept of God. It can neither be error nor spirit. Now, you know, that's the most important point in all healing work. So if you don't understand that, stay here, even if we have to serve breakfast. If you do not understand this point, get it tonight. God is the substance of all that is. God is the substance, the law, the continuity, the activity of all that exists. Can you see God or God's formations? No. No, you never will see it with your eyes. That's an utter impossibility. Then is this God or a formation of God? No. What is it? Is it error, evil? No. What is it? It is a concept of God's form, a form of God. It is a concept. It is a concept. You who know Christian Science ought to remember that. Sometimes beautiful, always erroneous. You ought to know that. No matter what it is that you see with your eyes, it may be beautiful, but it's erroneous. Erroneous in the sense that it is not God or God manifest. You cannot see God with your eyes, nor can you see God manifest. So whatever you are beholding is a concept, sometimes beautiful, but always erroneous, says Mrs. Eddy. Couldn't be more wonderfully put than that. Now, the mistake in healing, and the reason for failure to heal, is that the moment somebody says the temperature is 99 2/5, you say, oh, isn't that wonderful? And you think you have a spiritual demonstration, even knowing that tomorrow it may be up to 100 again. Now please remember this. If you can see it, hear it, taste it, touch it, or smell it, it isn't God or of God. It is a concept of God. Now when you see a healthy human being, you are merely seeing a better concept. And when you see a sick human being, you are merely seeing a poorer concept. But when you understand God to be true being, then that poorer concept gives way to the better concept until the day of transition. I don't mean passing on. I mean the transition in consciousness to the realization of, God is my life. Now that's not a concept anymore. Now that is God itself made evident. Only you still won't see it with your eyes. You will discern it inwardly, as Peter did when Jesus said, who do ye say that I am? And Peter said, oh, thou art the Christ. Now he didn't see Jesus with his eyes and call him Christ. He looked right through the eyes of Jesus and saw there the soul of the man and knew that it was Christ realized in the form of the man Jesus. So a practitioner looks at you and does not see you humanly. You may be presenting a beautiful appearance, a healthy appearance, but that does not fool the practitioner into thinking that you are spiritual. The practitioner still knows that all that he beholds with the physical senses is concept. But the practitioner, looking through the appearance of health and wealth, recognizes Christ as your invisible, true identity. Then, outwardly, you conform more nearly to that. Not yet fully. No. Jesus didn't conform to it fully until the ascension. In the outer, he was the Christ on the inner. He was the man Jesus with wounds on the outer. But from the moment of ascension, there was no man Jesus with wounds. There was only Christ exemplified, manifest, expressed, and there were no more wounds visible. He carried no wounds with him up on that cloud into heaven. No one carries a mortal concept of body into their spiritual consciousness. And that is why a practitioner on the spiritual path or a teacher on the spiritual path never takes your name or identity or the looks of your body or the diagnosis of your body into his meditation or treatment. Because you cannot take a mortal concept into divine consciousness. They just will not mix. The only thing that can happen on this path, if you are called on for help, is that you do not look at the person you are helping, or do not look at their name, or at their diagnosis, but look right through the center of being. If you have to look into a bright star up there, and say, no, Christ is the only true identity of individual being, and keep your gaze on Christ as true individual identity, and you will bring out healing. But never call anything evil, and on the other hand, never call anything good. Not even Jesus. Why callest thou me good? There is but one good, the Father in heaven. Therefore, call nothing evil, call nothing good. There is nothing evil, because all there is God manifest, God expressed, God individualized. And that's all there is, regardless of what you're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, or smelling. But just because the appearance gets a little better, a little more enjoyable, don't go around saying, oh, you're spiritual now. No, you're not spiritual. Inwardly, in your inner being, you are spirit itself, and the degree of your realization of that brings out a greater and more harmonious appearance of good, but still appearance. You see that? All is God, but all that we see with the physical senses, see, hear, taste, touch, or smell, is in the realm of concept. So never look at a healthy appearance or beautiful appearance and call it good. Don't be satisfied with it. Don't be satisfied if you could pass a medical examination tomorrow and the doctor says you have another 100 years to live. Don't be satisfied. He's only talking about your physical life, and a little bomb could throw it out. A little germ could throw it out. An automobile hitting you could throw it out. Don't be satisfied to think that a good human appearance is spiritual. The only time and the only way that you can ever become aware of spiritual being is through your spiritual apprehension. The same faculties that enabled Peter to know that Jesus was the Christ, that is the faculty that enables you and me to know that we are the Christ. You'll certainly not know it by looking at us. No. We don't resemble it even when we're healthy, and even those who have the good fortune to be beautiful or handsome do not show forth the Christ. The only way you know the Christ, well, you know all those stories of people who were seeking the Christ and always seemed to miss it, and then usually at some time or other found that the little beggar that came to the door had been that very Christ. Why, certainly. There are thousands of short stories written on that very theme of people who are looking for the Christ, searching all over. But when a beggar came to their door, they didn't recognize the Christ. They have a legend in Hawaii of the same sort, Mother Pele, Madam Pele. She is the goddess of the volcanoes. And don't get her mad, or you're going to have that volcano stirred up. And how does she do? She tests the people continuously. You'll be driving along the road in your car, and some haggard little old lady will come up and want a ride, and you'll say, no, I should say not, and you'll drive on. And then you'll find that night that was Madam Pele. You got her mad. The next day you lost your job or got sick or something like that. And on the other hand, if you pick her up and give her a ride in town, chances are next day your salary will be doubled or your family will get well. Something wonderful will happen. If enough people keep angering her that way, that volcano is going to get stirred up. Now, a strange thing out there, that volcano has never killed anyone. It never has killed anyone, and that's because Mother Peely, Madam Peely, doesn't want anybody hurt. She wants them taught a lesson. So she stirs that up and lets it run so that you know that she's mad and you know that you've disturbed her. Now you better be good from now on. And usually you are, if you're Hawaiian. Now, it is in the same way that Christ is the identity of every individual. And to offend one of the least of these is to offend the Christ. There's more truth in that little story of Madam Peely than we believe. To offend one of the least of these, to ignore, to hurt one of the least of these, is to offend the Christ, because Christ is. That's the whole story of Matthew 25 in here. That when I was in prison, ye visited me. When I was sick, ye comforted me. When I was naked, ye clothed me. So forth and so on. What, Lord? When were you in prison and we visited you? When were you sick and we comforted you? Oh, he winds up. Inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. And so it becomes us never to look upon a person as a human or as a mortal. And it is in this wise, in answer to this question, that you overcome this chemicalization and overcome this antagonism. You will not feel too much of this antagonism except in your immediate circle, where your own degree of spirituality may arouse the jealousy or enmity or malice of those who have not yet attained the measure that they believe they should, or probably the measure that they believe they have already attained. But ordinarily, you will find yourself well loved in this life by most of the people you contact, if you make a practice of beholding the Christ of their being. Don't rejoice in their beautiful humanhood or their wealthy humanhood or their healthy humanhood. Get used to the idea of looking through the humanhood and beholding the Christ. Then, when you witness the deformed, mentally, physically, morally, or financially, it becomes easy for you not to condemn, judge, or criticize even the alcoholic or the alcohol itself, but you look through it and realize actually Christ is the only being and the all being. And anything that appears here, even though it's beautiful, is erroneous.